Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a pretty wild idea that sits right at the intersection of AI and crypto. What if you could literally turn the raw power of AI computation into a new kind of money? Well, that's the whole concept behind a project called Foundation Coin.
So let's just jump right in with the big question, right? Is it even possible to create a fungible token, a currency, from the value of pure computation? In other words, could you turn the processing power that runs AI into something you can trade, just like Bitcoin?
And before we go any further, let's make sure we're on the same page with this term, fungible token. It's actually super simple. It just means each unit is exactly the same as any other. You know, like a dollar bill in your wallet is the same as a dollar bill in mine. One Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. They're all interchangeable.
And that is exactly what Foundation Coin is trying to do. The whole goal here is to take that raw AI compute power, that digital horsepower, and turn it into a universal currency. Something that you and I could trade, or, maybe one day, something AIs could even trade between themselves. Okay, so how would something like this even work? Well, it means you have to completely rethink how cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin operate. You've got to move away from what's known as proof of work and try something totally new. So check this out. With Bitcoin's proof of work, you've got computers all over the world solving these incredibly difficult but kind of useless math puzzles. And yeah, it secures the network, but the byproduct is just a ton of wasted energy and heat. Now, this new idea, proof of benefit, says, hey, what if we took all that energy and pointed it at something useful, like actually doing valuable AI computations? Right, and this is probably what you're thinking. Wait a second. Isn't proof of work the whole reason Bitcoin is secure? It's the secret sauce, right? So how on earth can you just throw it out without, breaking everything?
Well, here's the key insight, the big idea. A blockchain security doesn't actually come from the type of problem being solved. Nope. It comes from the sheer amount of computing power, the hash rate that's pointed at the network. The chain with the most power behind it wins. That's the one that's secure.
And that is the aha moment. It means you can basically get rid of all that abstract puzzle solving. You can replace it with something beneficial, like training an AI. And as long as miners are still competing with all their computing power to do that job, the network stays just as secure. The work is just useful now. So what does this actually mean for the miners? The people running the computers that power this whole thing?
You'd think a shift this big would change everything. But, surprisingly for the miners, the game is pretty much the same. The competition? Oh, it's still there, and it's fierce.
The work is just pointed in a new direction. Instead of solving random puzzles, miners pick an AI model and just throw all their computing power at it. They're all still competing to have the highest hash rate, and whoever does the most work wins that block reward. Only this time, the reward is Foundation Coin.
And this is the really crucial part. The basic incentive structure is identical to Bitcoin. The more horsepower you bring, the more compute you mine, the more Foundation Coin you're rewarded with. It's still all about having the most power.
But here's the thing. Foundation Coin isn't the only one with this idea. Not by a long shot. This whole thing is happening inside a much bigger and, honestly, kind of chaotic competitive landscape. It's a lot like the early days of the internet. It's a fantastic analogy. Back then, you had all these different companies and projects, each with their own protocol, all fighting to become the standard. And in the end, one of them, TCP/IP, won out, and it's what we all use today. We are seeing that exact same kind of protocol war playing out right now in the world of decentralized AI. Foundation Coin is a contender, for sure, but you've also got heavy hitters like BitTensor and Render Network all in the race to become the dominant platform. And look, we have to remember, it is super early days for all of this stuff. There are still huge technical questions hanging over all these projects, including Foundation Coin. Can it actually scale? Is it going to support things like smart contracts? All this uncertainty is a really big part of the story. And all of this leads us to what is maybe the most important and trickiest question of all. The entire system, this whole idea, hinges on one little word: benefit.
So let's just remember how this is supposed to work. The system is set up to reward the miners who take on the biggest, most computationally intensive tasks. The assumption is that the harder the problem, the more beneficial the solution must be. More complexity equals more value.
But that raises a really deep, almost philosophical question, doesn't it? Is the hardest problem really always the most beneficial one for humanity? And maybe more importantly, who gets to decide which AI problems are actually worth solving in the first place?
And that's the thing. That's the human element here.
that technology just can't solve by itself. A computer protocol can measure compute power perfectly, but it has no way of measuring what we, as people, actually value. It can't measure ethics.
And that's really the thought I want to leave you with. As we're building these incredibly powerful new systems, merging the future of AI with the future of finance, maybe the hardest problem we're going to have to solve isn't technical at all. Maybe it's a deeply human one. What do we actually think is beneficial? What do we truly value?